Oh, hello. How is everyone? Today we're doing a third installment of the Mars retrograde because my Virgo placements cannot skip the detail. And my Cancer placements want to make sure that you have them so that you are nurtured, prepared, and cared for during a big transit that only happens every 2 years and is definitely happening somewhere in your chart. So, if you haven't caught part one and part two, that's important. It's heavily time stamped, so you don't have to watch. If it looks like it's an hour and a half, you don't have to watch the whole hour and a half, especially the middle one. And the first two-parter, this is the second half of the second part, or the third part, however you want to label it. But it's heavily time stamped. The first one is going to give you all of the information about how Mars really, all the things that it rules in our lives, how that planet normally behaves, and then how it behaves in retrograde, and then also how it behaves specifically in retrograde in Cancer. What are the themes around that, and how it specifically operates in retrograde in Leo, and what are the themes around that. And then we're breaking it down, not only just like if it's in this house, you have a Mars retrograde, but if it's the Cancer from 16 to 29 degrees is in this house, that's how it's going to operate. And then if it's Leo from 0 to 6 degrees in the same house or in a different house, that's how it's going to express, because astrology is layers. That's why pop astrology doesn't make sense. That's why it's in the details, it's in the math, and it's in the layers. And when you see an astrologer like really reading a chart or really reading transits, we can give you a general idea. This is going to give you a general idea. These videos never really replace a reading, because your chart is going to have special aspects. Those, in other words, the Mars retrograde might be having a very special, specific conversation in your chart, in a trine, in a sextile, in a square, in an opposition in your chart that's not happening for anyone else. And specifically with the rest of your placements, and specifically for where you're at in life. Have you had your Uranus return? Have you had your Uranus opposition? Have you had your Saturn return? So that's going to be different for you, because the reason that I'm an evolutionary astrologer is because our chart kind of progresses. We progress, we evolve, and our planets mature in placement, and they act a little differently in our seasoned years than they do in our fresh and fun years. You could be fresh and fun in season, but you know what I'm saying. So hi everyone in the chat. So I got very specific. This is the third part. So we are going to go through where the 0 to 6 degrees of Leo is in your chart. So take a second. If you're watching this in the replay viewers, first of all, replay viewers, I love you all to pieces. I'm so appreciative of the chat and the live chat. I kind of just love streaming live because it's easier. And my schedule is happily busy, so just going live is easier than recording and editing and uploading and all of that. But the replay viewers, you guys are the meat and potatoes of the views, and people who share and like and comment and all that. I really appreciate all the engagement. So where you still have to watch the first part, and everybody's chart somewhere has 16 to 29 degrees of Cancer, and so you should watch yesterday's video, and then today is where you're going to have it in Leo from 0 to 6 degrees. So grab your chart, find 0 to 6 degrees, and we are going to look at what house that's in and how Mars retrograde specifically in Leo is going to behave specifically in that house for you. We want to, astrology is personal. We can use it to predict collective things. Speaking of which, the queen of that, the master of that. Let's not even make it, gender specific of queen or king. The master of that is Ms. Lori Rivers over at the Awake Space Astrology podcast, her YouTube. You could just Google her and you will find all the places that you can find her. And we recorded an episode for her podcast that will be on Monday. So I her podcast is kind of a big deal. So I'm a little excited. I'm a little geeked out. I'm a little fangirl, not going to lie. But I'm on the Awake Space podcast tomorrow. I think she launches at around 9 a.m. So if you don't already subscribe to her, you can listen to her on Spotify, wherever. Please do, and support Lori, because you should, because she's just an incredible source of information, and she's very accurate, and also to come holler at your girl and say hi, and I would be thrilled for the extra support, and we're announcing stuff on that episode as well, so that's pretty cool. I'm looking at the comments. 29-degree Cancer, 6th house cusp. Yeah. Now, and here's the thing, we spoke a little bit about this on the episode that'll launch Monday. Mars retrograde is like I keep seeing all these like TikTok videos or whatever, like, Mars is retrograde. I have personally had an upgrade in my career every single Mars retrograde, every single one of them. This will be the third one, so over 6 years. I mean, also, if you are overscheduled, overwhelmed, that Jupiter in Gemini is hitting hard and you just feel like, frazzled, and that life is life is going very fast on the outside, right? We can all agree the outside's a little bit of a dumpster fire right now. So, that chaos can seep in, and just if the Jupiter in Gemini, the Taurus and Uranus and everything, Mars is going to be like, lay down, take a nap. Pull back, right? It's going to, Lori and I were saying, like, we're kind of excited for it because it's a little bit of a rest period, and it's not like we won't be working, and it's not like we won't be like taking care of our families, but the hecticness will slow down in a Mars retrograde, and that's a beautiful thing for a lot of us, right? Because we're human beings and not human doings. We're supposed to be. Yeah, very interesting. We had no subject matter. We just went at it yesterday. So the conversation gets really interesting. We talk about all that kind of stuff. Hello, Samantha. Hi, Adva and Shauna and Juan. Always feel like the romper room lady. Not mad at that. So don't be scared of the Mars retrograde. It's going to allow you a rest period, a respite. And here's the thing, you meet every energetic and astrological opportunity with your own free will. So if you look at this like, oh my God, all of my plans are being thwarted, it's the same way you should expect delays and expect technology issues when there's a Mercury in retrograde. When Mars is in retrograde, you're going to expect to have some delays. Whether you experience the frustration is kind of your decision. It really is. You can use it as a re-strategizing rest, like, ooh, I get to take a little bit more time to make this decision, or maybe I want to fine tune. We're fine tuning here, folks, in this time period. And to reiterate, Mars retrograde only happens every 2 years. It is the least frequent of the planets that go retrograde, which are all the planets but the luminaries. Sun and Moon never go retrograde. It started December 6th at 6:33 in the evening at 6 degrees and 10 minutes of Leo, and it's going to retrograde all the way back to 17 minutes and 0 degrees of Cancer, almost at that 1659 degrees of Cancer, and that is February 23rd when it stations to go direct between 8 and 9 in the evening Eastern. When I'm speaking of time, I'm speaking of Eastern, and I know that you are all brilliant and wonderful and can convert that to your own time zone. It's New York time. And January 6th is the date that it moves from that 0 degrees of, because going backwards, 0 degrees of Leo into Cancer. So that is when the retrograde energy moves from Leo into Cancer. They act differently. That is why I'm bothering to do the 3 videos. That's why I'm bothering to give you all the detail, because it's not going to be the same. Telling you what Mars in retrograde in Leo is going to be like, and applying that to the house where it lands for you in Cancer and when it's in the degrees of Cancer is really giving cliff notes to the point where it's, I believe, not as helpful. So I'm just going to read a couple more. What do you think about your chart that led to those career upgrades? Well, Mars is just, I don't want to get into like my chart, and I don't want to digress too much because this stays congruent for the replay viewers. That's a great question. Mars is, we look at Mars for career. Mars is strategizing. Mars is action. Mars is trajectory. Mars is how we execute the actions, right? We can feel, right? We can moon into it and feel what we want out of life. We can, rising sign, feel how we present and how we would want to present to the world and how we kind of POV the world, right? We can have a certain amount of energy and a certain amount of specific expression with our sun, but we are feeling what we want with our moon. We are planning and thinking and talking about with our Mercury. And we can desire and attract and feel how we feel safe and secure with our Venus. And then we have to put the action behind it in Mars. Right? Because we can like POV the world. We can decide we have a certain amount of drive and energy to feel drawn to something. We can want it. We can desire it. We can intuit. We can feel like instinctively, yeah, that's who I am. That's what I want. And we can talk about it. But Mars is where we be about it, right? Yeah, Mars is your driver. Absolutely. So when the driver's like, I'm off duty from now until February 23rd, that is why I'm saying it kind of creates a rest period. So if, if you take it as I'm being put down, I used to say that all the time, that like I would not stop. I would work 3 jobs. I would work past illness. That was my life. I was in survival mode, right? I was dysregulated all the time, but it was survival mode. I had kids. I had bills to pay. And everybody would say, Susie, you have to slow down. Susie, I can't. And then we would all joke, because I knew that what would happen is I would end up in a hospital. I would keep going until life said, oh my God, lay the fuck down, Susie. And so this is kind of, the retrograde time, again, it is respite, and it is supposed to be pulling back and going inward instead of the outward action. It's also about pausing and reflecting before moving, which creates space for strategy, which is what Mars is about. Mars is the action, right? So we can feel about it and think about it and plan about it, in hypotheticals, but if we're going to be about it, that's Mars. Also, I go through, at the end of the first video, I talk about all the ways that Mars retrograde can affect our health. What I want to say is that, thank you for sharing Laurie's channel. What I want to say is that Mars isn't going to cause the health problems. Mars in retrograde is going to make you stop and then it's going to bring anything to the surface that already exists. And it's going to show you like an indicator, like right when your check engine light goes on, or when anything else happens, it's a visual. That's when when you have the heating and air conditioning and it says change filter. It's an indication. Any kind of health stuff that arises is an indication of something that's going on, below the surface already. It's going to show up in a way of inflammation. Now, because we're talking Leo and Cancer, we're talking about it could show up through, we're looking at cardiac issues. We're also looking at matters of the heart, but we're talking about health. We're looking at cardiac issues, right? And we're looking at chest issues, breathing, and stomach, digestive issues. Now, if those come up, I don't want you to just slap a Band-Aid. When Mars in retrograde happens to us, again, only every 2 years, this is not, universe isn't saying, hey, slap a Band-Aid on it and keep pushing, because whatever is coming up is because you were already slapping a Band-Aid on it and kept pushing. And I'm preaching out of experience here and academic astrology. But I mean, I have the lived experience to back up the research that says, it's just an indicator of what's already going on. And if you try to slap a Band-Aid on it, especially during Mars retrograde, and keep it pushing, it's going to exasperate. We don't want that. These are very important parts of the body that we need. Gut health is everything. We know that now. So no matter what house you're having in it, your Mars retrograde, we're avoiding surgeries, especially elective surgeries. Don't do any elective surgeries during Mars retrograde. I don't care what house you have in it. Just, it's not a good idea. And we're looking at inflammation. We're paying more attention to inflammation. We're paying more attention to our gut health. We're paying more attention to our chest health. If you are female and you have not had a mammogram in a long time, this is a great time to go get a mammogram. Use the time to tend to yourself. Use the pause to not feel taken down by astrology or taken down by life, but we're supposed to pause and reflect. When something comes up around ego, around family issues, around, because conflict is also Mars, right? So things may come up around there, those subjects. Could you just deal with it, whatever's going on right now? Yes, but the Mars retrograde is long enough to give you the opportunity, and my advice would be to look at the core reason as much as it's safe for you to do so, to heal it once and for all. In the themes, in the house, in the signs, that it is specifically for you. And again, that's not going to replace a personal reading that may be hitting someplace else. If you are a member, when we do the Ask Me Anything at the last weekend of the month, it's Fridays at 6:30 Eastern and Saturdays at noon, because we have lots of people on the other side of the world. So I try to make a daytime and then an evening, because for the West Coast people, daytime means they're work or sleeping. So when we do that, I absolutely, for the Nerd and Gratitude members, will be able to go over your chart and tell you what the personal aspects, we can look at like 1 or 2 things just for the Mars retrograde. And that's the benefit of membership. If you're interested in membership, all those links are in. And next weekend will be all levels of membership. And I will put up a poll so you guys can decide what you want me to talk about. And then we'll get on with the learning series the next week. We're doing house systems. It's fun. Okay. So yeah, health definitely shows up. Let me just we're going to focus on Leo. All the other information is in the other 2 videos. Again, heavily timestamped, highly recommend. Hey, Maricela. So let's look at, and I'm going to, sorry, I lied. I'm going to give one more example. I want to show you why you may have to look at 3 different timestamps to understand how this is happening, because you're going to at least have to look at 2, because it's happening in more than one sign. Last time it happened, here we go. It happened in just Gemini. And the time before that, it happened in just Aries. So this is unique because it's sharing signs starting in Leo and ending up in Cancer, and it spends most of its time in Cancer. So you're going to have at least how the energy expresses, even if all of it is in one house, right? Like say that you have 6 degrees of Leo to, or rather 16 degrees of Cancer to all the way to 6 degrees of Leo, and that's in one house. Great. But you still should be listening for the timestamp for Leo in that house and Cancer in that house, because they're going to express differently. But if you're like me and the cusp of your, this is my chart. So my chart here has that 16 degrees. It's where my Mars is. So this is happening in a very personal way for me, but I'm excited about it. Because then when it goes direct, it's going to go right over my Venus. Not so shabby for Susie. But that 16 degrees is in my 10th house. And the cusp of my 10th house is at 28 degrees. So I'm going to be listening for the Cancer for 16 to 29 degrees. I'm going to be listening to that part for the 10th house, which was yesterday's video. And I still have to listen to today for both I still also have to listen to Cancer in the 11th house, because I'm having 28 and 29 degrees of this Mars retrograde in Cancer in the 11th house. And then today I would be listening to Leo in the 11th for that 0 to 6. So for me, there would be 3 timestamps. So if you don't have all 16 degrees of Cancer to 6 degrees of Leo in one house, you're most likely listening to 3. I hope that made sense. If I try to use this to yeah. That's an excellent point, Shauna. You can always look back at the last time that Mars is in retrograde. And specifically, Mars, thank you, Shauna, is saying that last time Mars was retrograde in Leo was December of 2009. To March of 2010. That is very interesting too when I'm thinking about what that looked like in my life. So think about what life looked like between December of 2009 and March of 2010. And it went 17 to 0 degrees of Leo. So astrology doesn't lie, and we see cycles and patterns in that. So hopefully everybody understands. Does everybody understand how they're listening for your house? And you're going to have to listen for both Leo and Cancer. So there's a timestamp for you, at least 1 in yesterday's video and at least 1 in today's video, and possibly 2, depending on where the cusp is for your house. Yeah. Also, though, all the other planets are different and you are different. 2009 was 15 years ago. So you are a very different person than you were 15 years ago, especially if you're attracted to this channel, especially if you're hearing my voice. You're not the same either. So you're going to deal with it differently. Okay, so if anyone can take timestamps, thank you again, Maricela, for yesterday's timestamps. If anyone's able, I'm going to start running through the timestamps. These are not long. This video is specifically Leo, specifically Leo. So we're going to find 0 to 6 degrees of Leo and what house that's in our chart. And if it's split between, if you've got a house cusp at 4 degrees of Leo, then you're going to listen to where 0 to 4 degrees are and 4 to 6 degrees are, okay? Like I said, some people will actually have 3 timestamps. A lot of people will. It'll probably be more rare. And if you've got really, really skinny houses, you could be listening for 4, but that's going to be very, very rare. Okay. We have, just to recap, the themes of Mars retrograde in Leo. It can feel like a dramatic reassessment of how we express passion, how we assert ourselves, whether we're comfortable taking center stage or whether we feel like maybe we're overdue for center stage. And the other big thing is recalibrating our authenticity and our authority only based on our own validation. Right? And if that is not the case right now, if you really need the feedback to know, like, I can't move forward unless I get feedback and I know it's okay, then this is the time to look at the core reason. Who would not validate you? Who would not listen? How did you not feel seen or heard when you were younger? Like, let's go look at the core reason for that so you could just heal it in this rest period. So that moving forward, you're not putting a Band-Aid on something. We're looking at core reasons, and moving forward, you're less dependent on the feedback and the validation to feel like you've done a good job, like feel like you have authority. You don't need, Leo energy can come off really, boss kind of confident energy. But the reason, I don't know where that just came from. The reason that confidence shows a lot of times is because they had to give that to themselves. They had to get the feedback because there was probably something lacking when they were younger. It's also, though, about redefining how you use creativity. Leo is the sun, and it's a little bit ego, and like this came up for me this summer. It was actually a private conversation with Lori that helped me really have the epiphany so that I could have the ego death around this. Ego deaths don't mean that you're a big fat jerk egotistical beehole. It means that there's something that we have an attachment to around our identity that's probably tied to a survival mode behavioral or survival mode avoidance. For me, it's always wanting to be taken seriously. I won't go into the whole big long story, but it's a theme in my life, right? Not being taken seriously. So I could be funny. I used to do theater arts. I went to performing arts high school. It's not like I'll go into some place sober and dance in the middle of the dance floor and I don't care who's watching. It's not a shyness problem. But I haven't done those skits and everything that everybody does on social media because I feel like that my own if other people do them, I don't take them less seriously. I'm afraid other people will take me less seriously if I do them, right? So I needed that ego death around that. And so I want you all to be looking at wherever you have Leo in your chart, what house and the subjects it's around. I want you all to look at where do you stop yourself? Right? Where do we stop ourselves because we want to be taken seriously, or we don't, maybe we're not as creative because we're afraid that will be taken less serious. And and that affects our identity and our ego, which is how we have to identify, and especially if we've been fighting to be seen and really heard and not misunderstood, which Leo energy can struggle with until it masters it, which you will. If that is a thing for you, I promise you, you will. You get on the other side of that. There's an arc for everyone. But this Mars retrograde, because it's in Leo and because it'll be at that raw 0 degrees, it's a beautiful time to look at that. When the planet of action goes retrograde and kind of takes a little break in a fiery sign, it really creates a fun challenge, if you want to look at it like that, and a really great space opportunity to look at anything that's blocked. Look at resentments too. Like I said, it's about taking the authority in your center stage and what what you're skilled for. I promise you're probably very good at something, right? But are you asserting that knowledge? Are you asserting that authority? And what is your relationship with taking center stage? Is that like, no. Does that give you anxiety, the thought of it? Or do you have resentment because you feel like everybody else is getting center stage when you're overdue, right? It's ambition. Mars is ambition. It's ego. It's personal desires. And so anything that's blocked can kind of be unblocked. We're looking at core reasons. We're taking the opportunity. We're re-strategizing. And we're healing. You can heal a lot during Mars retrograde. If you're older and you've done a lot of this work, then you're just refining. It's about the nuances, right? Just getting more sweetness out of life, getting more inner peace and balance out of life. Okay. So we're pausing and reflecting. We are, it's your choice whether you feel the frustration, but there can be blocks and delays. And if you feel like you're asserting yourself and it's falling on deaf ears, we can always look at how it is that we're asserting ourselves. We can always look at who's the crowd that we're trying to get approval from. I'm gonna say this, and I hope you really hear me. There are some people who are never going to give you their approval, not because of who you are, but because of who they are. And if you are a place in life where there is one person or a bunch of people where you are knocking on that door, I want you to really look at whether that is a challenge to lay down, because make sure you're competing with yourself. Make sure you feel proud. Make sure you feel validated with yourself, because some people are just never ever going to give you that because they are bitter, because they fear the competition, because they need to feign the authority of everybody needing their approval for their own insecurities. And those people never present as insecure. Never. That's a big theme for Mars in retrograde in Leo. Right? Let's start going through the houses. If you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in the first house, that's identity and self-image. You are not getting a haircut. You are not getting Botox. You are not getting Sculptra, or I'm trying to think of all the things. None of that. None of that. Nothing invasive, nothing with a needle, nothing with scissors. I would probably not get your hair colored either. I would not make any big physical changes right now. Nope. Personal confidence, how you assert yourself. If you have this in the first house, if you've ever heard, like, I've been walking around worried if other people like me and not worried if I like them, that's I'm not saying walk around and like, I don't like you and you and you. I'm not saying that. But if you have Leo in the first house, make sure you like you. And then that's all the opinion that matters. When you walk into a room, woo, I'm telling you, learn, practice it, especially in the rest. I don't practice it. You're Leo. You know how to practice. You know how to like role play with yourself, with others on a stage. But if you have, listen, if you've got that Leo and it's at the bottom of the chart, hi Heidi. If it's at the bottom of the chart or it's a less extroverted Leo, right? Practice it with yourself. Learn how to walk into a room like you own it. Not by being unkind to others, not by looking down at others, but just by feeling really fucking good about yourself. If you feel blocked, and I said this all through the Cancer houses too, but if you feel blocked by pursuing your goals, if you feel blocked by initiating new projects right now, that's because Mars is in retrograde. And the other thing that's meant to do is for you to find an easier way, re-strategize, and make it creative. While it's in Leo, whatever house it's in Leo in, I promise you, find a creative solution. Your physical energy, especially in the first house, could be lower. We're all going to experience a little bit of like, it's Mars in retrograde. That's part of our drive. Like your sun is your essential energy. But if this is going over your sun, and I went over that in the first video, if it's going over your sun, moon, Mars, Venus, and Saturn and Mercury, and I did that in each sign also, that will make you feel, so plan restful things. That is not the time to plan cooking a 12-course dinner and, detailing your house with a toothbrush because you have company coming over. Make other plans, enlist help. Don't try to take it all on, especially if your sun is also in the first house in Leo and it's 0 to 6 degrees. How do you sit in your authentic self? How do you sit in your authentic self? Because that's a you decision. Other people don't get to decide for you how you sit in how you present in your authentic self. Socially, we're told that that's how it works, but it's not. It's not. That's funny. Are we all talking about Friday night? Because Friday night I also slept 11 hours. Sorry, everybody that's watching this in the replay. In the comments there, everybody's talking about how they got like so much sleep, like 12 hours. I got 11 and a half on Friday night. Shocked. Like solid. I don't even remember my dreams. I don't remember waking up and repositioning. Just out like a light. And that never happens for me. I was very happy about it. So everybody else that experienced that on Friday night, and then we'll go look at the transits, because it's a lot of membership people. We'll go look at that transit for that Friday night. The last thing I want to say about the first house is the way it can practically show up is that if you are somebody who works out and you are feeling less motivated, I don't want you to worry that that's like, especially if you've been focusing on your health, you've been focusing on going to the gym for your health, that this is something maybe of a change for you and you've gotten so far and then all of a sudden you're just not going to feel it. You're not going to feel the drive to go to the gym. You're not going to feel the energy. And I don't want you to worry. This is temporary. I don't want you to worry that you're not going to get that back. You're not going to get that get up and go. You will. And in fact, you'll probably have a better way to do it when this all goes direct, if you use the time properly. Okay, Second house, if you have 0 to 6 degrees, where you have 0 to 6 degrees, if you have that in the second house, of course, we're talking money and values and streams of income. And, the second house is our foundations, our security, and how we feel safe and secure and even, kind of loved in certain ways. And so in Leo, I want you to think about how you feel supported for what you bring to the table. And if you are not feeling supported about what you bring to the table, how you provide either financially or in any other way in your living situation, this is a time to sit back and recalibrate whether you want to keep giving to a situation that doesn't appreciate you, or whether you want to just have a conversation so resentments don't build up. Mars in retrograde is a great time to look at your relationship with both passion and resentment. Because, as I have said ad nauseum in both the other videos, held back anger, Mars retrograde, held back resentments, Mars retrograde, both of those will get you ill, chronically, cancer, the worst kind of not well. If you need help processing, we're always talking about that on this channel, but this is time to process. And the physical frustrations, you just do it like maybe you're doing yoga at home, maybe you're doing somatic workouts at home, if you don't feel the drive to go to the gym and go hard. But when it's in that second house, we're also talking about how we feel valued on our self-worth and also our possessions, and making sure that none of the possessions are to give the appearance of worth. Possessions should be because you want them, because they mean something to you, but never to give the appearance to others that you have worth, to prove your worth. So we're going to be looking at that. Practical manifestations. Financial setbacks can happen, or delays in earning potential. A raise could be delayed. But again, expect it. The way that you would expect to hit traffic delays if you were going somewhere on an airplane, or technology glitching like crazy during Mercury retrograde, right? So if you go into the Mars retrograde knowing that there might be some delays, and especially in promotions and raises where there's recognition around it in Leo, there might be a delay, but it could be because the recognition that you're supposed to get is also delayed. That happens. We can feel like, we are working our butts off, and it's like wetting a pants in a dark suit, gives you a warm feeling, no one notices. That's a struggle for everyone in life, no matter where your placements are. But in Leo in the second house, it matters. It contributes to how we feel valued in this world, and that's a big deal. Our value kind of calibrates what kind of money we think we can earn, and what kind of money will attract, what kind of love, the quality of partner, the quality of life we think we deserve. All of that is based on your own self-value. And so we want to make sure we're not putting that value in the hands of others, right? But there could be a delay in things, especially around recognition, that are also tied to income, streams of income. If this is happening in your second house, we are especially not around Q4, because that's where it's hitting. It's already in Leo now, right? We are going to be careful about Christmas. First of all, I think we're all on board. It's very Les Mis out there right now. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Consumerism is lower priority for a lot of people this holiday season. And so if you have Mars from 0 to 6 degrees in the second house, I would especially encourage you to be careful of your spending habits, especially if it's any kind of keeping up with the Joneses, like everybody else's kids are getting whatever, the new iPhone or something, and you don't want your kid to feel like less. Uh, Getting anything for anyone, to feel like you're doing your part and everybody can see you're doing your part, especially around gift giving. Uh, that's it, and it's okay for our kids to learn that it doesn't always have to just be the biggest best thing and that everybody else is getting it. But in spending, we're not doing a lot of spending, we're not doing a lot of investing right now, just we're not. Use the time to create sustainable budget and focus on building self-worth from within. Absolutely. If you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in your third house, the way this Mars retrograde could express for you is, of course, in the themes of siblings, communication, short trips. This is also, for me, the third house is very much about like how you were educated in the beginning. I feel like when we have the third house right at the bottom of the chart and then the ninth house is opening up, and that is expansion, that is seeing the world either through actually, physically seeing the world, or we're being digital nomads, right? And literary nomads. And so that is where the expansion is. We want to make sure we're not overly tethered from the foundations of learning and belief systems that we were just handed, because that was the neighborhood and that was our siblings, that was our parents, that was our church, that was our any kind of early influence that we didn't really have a choice to pick, right? That we might be deconstructing during Mars, especially if you have injury to claim. If you feel like you look back now and you're like, well, that was a harmful, belief system, and maybe my parents were doing the best that they could at the time, or my siblings were doing the best because we were all being sold this package of, this is the way things should be, right? So we're deconstructing a lot when Mars is in retrograde in the third house. The healing there is to allow yourself to love and value what was given to you as a child in beliefs and communication and all of that. Appreciate the people that did the best that they could, and then also make sure that it's not making you myopic in the ways that you can expand later. Okay? Practical manifestations, sure, you could have miscommunication with siblings, neighbors, cousins, friends you grew up with, because there's going to be a little mercurial flavor on this. And for, not for Cancer, but for Leos, until the 16th of this month, you're also having Mercury in retrograde, as you're having Mars retrograde. It gets really fun when Mars goes direct in February. It's just it's a couple of weeks later. I want to say it's like 10 days later, and then Venus goes retrograde, and then like 10 days after Venus goes retrograde, Mercury goes retrograde again. So we don't have it's gonna be that happens every 2 years. It's like that they piggyback each other, and things get real interesting. But usually it's Venus first. Well, not usually, but Venus is more often. So the last couple of times it's been Venus and then Mars, but this is the opposite. Miscommunication, obviously, and difficult. You might stumble, as I do all the time, but you might stumble if you are somebody who maybe has like a Mercury in retrograde in your chart, or you feel sometimes like when you walk away from something, like I should have said this and I said that, or now they're going to think I'm too emotional, or I did not communicate that, or I didn't come off as smart as I really am on that subject. That this might be exacerbated. This might not be the time that you get up and you give a big speech that you want to have a causation and action that leads to something However, it is a great, you might not feel heard, not gonna lie. You may, and if you have Leo energy in the third house, that could already be a thing. Again, we're looking at core issues. Let's fix it at the core issue, at the core reason, instead of putting a band-aid on it and keep it pushing, because that is why we have Martian inflammation and all kinds of other health issues, right? Is shoving stuff down, resentments and passive aggressive and anger that's not expressed, processed. And if you have trouble in your third house as it is, that could already be a theme for you. So go get support and how to process that. And writing, oh my God, writing, journaling, and revisiting projects where you write about yourself. If you want to take your own little like life story and make it into like a fiction, write it right now. It's a great time to take the respite to write and process or journal. It's also really kind of a fun time to learn another language. Practicing patience and communication. Sometimes I get so excited about connecting with somebody. That's a little bit of my neurospiciness. I'm interjecting while somebody else is still like their sentence is still lingering, or they're still at that last. And part of that is because I can intuit the end of their sentence, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't still have the space to finish their sentence, right? So like that's something I'm always working on. But reflecting how you use patience in communication, and also how you assert yourself in communication, both of those, whichever applies. If you have 0 to 6 degrees in the fourth house of Leo, the way the Mars retrograde could express is, emotional foundation. We're looking at genetic cycles. We're looking at family cycles. We're looking at, trauma breaking. We're looking at all of that right now. And your inner emotional security could be stuff with mom. Also, if your moon, and I talk about this in another video, but if Mars is going over your moon, mom could have a temporary health crisis. But if we know this ahead of time, we can kind of be diligent and watching and making sure she's okay. I experienced that with my mom, and I was on it like white on rice the minute I noticed something, and I was right. But I also had the heads up that this was happening on my moon, and so I was able to kind of be hyper vigilant, and that really kind of worked out for everybody's best interest. You can also have tensions with family members, particularly around issues of pride or control. If somebody continually pokes at your feelings and your ego, and is reductionary to who you are, and kind of belittles you at all, and that's a cycle for you. This could be when you decide to like, I'm not going to keep doing this dance. Like, there's no point in it. You're never going again. In Leo, like I said in the beginning, part of the theme is some people will never give you the approval. You're never going to come to a place where they can be respectful of you. Because this is what we're talking about, right? With ego and respect and pride. It's respectful. Some people are never going to be respected because of who they are, not because of who you are. It's not because of who you are. It is not. And there is no nicer way to be. There is no nicer thing you can do. There is no favor. There is no anything that you can do for somebody who is miserable inside and wants to disrespect you. Oh, I hope that is heard, even if it's family. Okay? Reevaluating your living space. Mars retrograde is a great time to kind of like rearrange your furniture, change the knobs. Now, if you're going to do home renovations, expect delays. The more control you will have over anything about redecorating and re-strategizing your home, you're going to do better and have less delays and have less frustration. One, if you expect the delays, or two, if you just don't do something that's out of your hands. But still, if you're like ordering couch cushions or pillow, I would even expect a delay around there, you know? But if you're doing all the work yourself, have at it. It's a great time to do that. Unresolved, passive aggressive, anger, the hard conversations. Instead of having them out of eruption or having them out of breaking, sitting down. I said this yesterday. Most companies, most corporations have like a operations book, and this is how we should all be operating on the daily. And also, there's part of the book, of the binder, of like, if there's a crisis, this is the mode of operation. Have that for yourself. Have it in your phone. Knock yourself out and get a trapper keeper. Have it, have a digital file, a real file of it, but have an operations manual for yourself. Know how you want to handle disrespect. Take this time to pull back and not engage with that person, and instead strategize. Yeah, employee handbook, and you're the employee. You are in charge of you. This Mars retrograde is about the authority you hold. Right? And also, Mars retrograde is about looking about action or reaction, especially when it's in Cancer, but all across the board, it's better to have a strategic action ready, like a handbook, or like a company operations manual, than it is to have to only deal with reaction. Yeah. And be gentle with yourself when you're exploring epigenetics also, and like ancestry can be something that becomes like a project when you have this in the 4th house. Okay. If you have this in the 5th house, 0 to 6 degrees, and I know we have a very sweet, lovely community member that has this. These are the themes of like risk, love, self-expression, children, romance, and kind of like fun, playful creativity, right? The practical manifestations of romantic relationships can feel a little strained. Also, like if you're a hot, heavy, physical, like, first of all, congratulations, good for you. If there's some, hi Michael, if there's some kind of like fiery chemistry, like, that's always fun. If that peels back right now, do not take it personal. Don't think that somebody saw your cellulite. Don't think that you gained 5 pounds. Don't think that there's somebody, more attractive at work. Libidos can dwindle, especially when we have this in the 5th house. Okay. So don't really try not to let that hit your ego. Try not to let that hit you personally. If all of a sudden it feels like somebody poured a whole bunch of water on the fire happening in your 5th house. And if that's how somebody deals with, like, if you or your partner has been cheated on, has been left for other people, have a childhood or a young adulthood where you felt not picked, this can really be a very sensitive, kind of sore subject of somebody all of a sudden pulling back their physical affection. And so make sure that you're taking the time to process those old wounds and trying not to take the pullback personal right now while Mars is in retrograde. Know before you go. Know before you go into transits makes a huge difference. Right? Is it me? Is it the Mars retrograde? It's not you. You're hot as shit. It's the Mars retrograde. You're fire. You're a 10 out of 10. It's the Mars retrograde. It's not you, baby. Okay. Challenges with your kids can come up. If your kids come to you with like something that feels like they have an injury to resent from their childhood, please make sure you're listening. I know it's going to hit you right where you live, because if you're a Leo and you have kids, Your kids are probably your pride and joy, right? So, and you probably, you might, not probably, but if you have Leo placements, how you are seen as a parent could feel like that's not cool. If we're talking about me being a bad parent or not trying, I promise you I was always trying. We can always be trying and still not do things perfect, and also each of our children are individual with their own individual charts and will experience the same thing that their sibling experienced completely different. While one thing may feel like one way of doing things may feel completely supportive to one child, it may feel anxiety or dismissive to the other. And we have to sit and listen in Mars retrograde so that we can, it doesn't fester. If you're feeling creative blocks, find a different way to be creative, or just rest. Just rest. Just rest. We are not risking. We're not going gambling. We are not going on the back of somebody's motorcycle without a helmet. We are not doing, the dumb ways to die. Not that during this. No, thank you. Nope. I like each and every one of you, and I would like you to be here after February 23rd. We are not flying out of planes. Not during a Mars retrograde. No, thank you. Not especially when you're having it in the 5th house. And we're also not going to the casino, and is it football season? Right? Baseball season is over. October is over. We're not putting down big bets on games. Just, I know I'm asking you to if you're like a gambling kind of person or like a fantasy football kind of person. I don't mean you're gambling your mortgage, but I'm just, the odds are not in your favor with Mars in retrograde in the 5th house. I don't think so. Yeah, and anything that's quietly brings you joy, focus on that. Performance is not going to be tip top, not in the bedroom, not like if you're used to like cooking, like you could be on Top Chef, you might not feel that, you may not be able to execute the way that you do flawlessly in creative acts or acts of self-discovery, performance-wise. It's just not your circus and not your monkeys from now until February 23rd, okay? And we're not taking that personal. If you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in your 6th house, the themes here are, minutia, pets, physical health, but also service to others and how we self-refine, how we self-evolve. The 6th house is always so grossly underestimated for its impact in our lives. So physical health. You are, if this is Leo, you are eating your oatmeal. You are maybe checking with your doctor if like turmeric and curcumin would be good, just to make sure it's like an anti-inflammatory and an anticoagulant that's natural. And, but if you're on Eliquis or some other, obviously if you're going to a Coumadin clinic, you've got that. You're doing all the right things. But like if there's a history of stroke, or you have long COVID, or you've had COVID a bunch of times, it tends to make your blood coagulate more than normal than if you didn't. So we're just gonna be like doing preemptive things that are, if you're not on any medications, then knock yourself out with 1 turmeric and curcumin every night. It's gonna just quell any inflammation that you might be dealing with in the 6th house. Cardiac function is probably the name of the game more than anything else. If you're having palpitations, make sure you're hydrated extra during this time. Nobody wants to go to the emergency room, right? With palpitations, heartburn, things like that. Look into natural remedies where you can. It seems counterintuitive, but like doing a little half of a shot of apple cider vinegar in some water with some, will just like diluted, will help you with heartburn at night. Heartburn can be a big problem with Mars in retrograde showing up, and that's usually an indicator of something else, right? We want to look at the core focus of why are we having inflammatory. Obviously, it's like cortisol levels are high, or stress is high, or what are you taking on, or what is your body like? We're not supposed to be doing this. We're not supposed to be working 3 jobs. Like, this isn't normal for a body, right? Absolutely, sixth house. Every house, we're going to be careful of inflammatory issues, cardiac issues. If it's cancer, we're going to be looking your cancer energy, not cancer the illness. If the cancer is in the 6th house or in any of the houses when Mars is retrograding in the cancer energy, we're looking at gut health, we're looking at breast health, chest health. We're just going to be, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because inflammation is probably going to be a bit of a bitch during this time. So burnout. You know anything about burnout? I bet you do. Also, because if you're having this in the 6th house, you may be Pisces rising. And so you may kind of take on the world and the world's energy. So there's like a subconscious burnout as well as a physical burnout. So we're not doing that, and we're not taking on. It's lovely to be empathetic, and it's lovely to be sympathetic, and it's lovely to be a safe place for other people, but not to the point where you're no good to yourself and you have core people, sometimes children, sometimes other family members, but just even for yourself, that you are responsible for your health and your well-being. Burnout is so much more than somebody who's just run out of steam or tired. It has health real issues, right? Overexertion. We're going to be looking for like anything that's like numb in our hands, especially if you're waking up and your hands are taking a little longer to like wake up. That's a sign. We're going to go to our doctor, right? Do what you can, like preemptively, like eating oatmeal. There are ways that our diet can be the thing that makes us ill, and we can heal a lot with the right kind of foods and spices and all kinds of things, right? Making a lemonade with cayenne and honey around the rim, like it's a martini. So you make like a little homemade lemonade. Yum. You could do agave, and then you put the glass and honey before you make it, and then you put a little cayenne on it. That is effing delicious. And it's also get your blood going. It's anti-inflammatory. It's antimicrobial. It's amazing. Put a little ginger in there. Like, make adrenal cocktails. Go take the rest time to go learn about all this stuff, and also go see doctors. Make sure if you have doctors, you're going to see doctors. If you already have, again, I cannot stress this enough, because this is heart in the 6th house. If you are already on blood thinners, if you already go to a Coumadin clinic, then you're going to want to consult a doctor before you make yourself spicy lemonade that's going to also anticoagulate your blood, or turmeric and curcumin, any of that. You're going to check with your doctor, check with your Coumadin clinic, whichever applies to you. I'm not a doctor. I'm just an astrologer that knows how this manifests for health. Taking new medication. If you are taking new medication during Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde, I would definitely maybe make sure you're getting a second opinion, and just make sure, like, you're going to just double check that the dosing is right and all of that. If you were talking about the new medication before Mercury retrograde, and before, like, if this has been a conversation between you and your doctor, the only time you usually start taking a new medication that's like last minute is like if you need antibiotics or something. So if this is like a conversation that's been going on well before Mars retrograde, I wouldn't worry about it. I just like double check at the pharmacy your dosage and stuff like that. and be really aware of any kind of like if you're having an immediate inflammatory bad reaction. I don't think that you will, but if you are, I'd pay attention to it, right? But if the conversation was going on before everything went into the Mercury and the Mars retrograde, I would not be overly concerned. Slow down, focus on sustainable routines. Right? Reassess what actually motivates you. We're also looking at for pet health and injury. Again, we're not doing anything, and no one should be getting elective surgery or anything else, but we're also going to make sure that our, this is a time where, like, if you let your animals out the door unsupervised, like cats, she don't like it. But when we have these kind of transits, there are transits I do not let my rescue cat out that's resentful of her rescue and really does not want to be indoors at all. She stays in our backyard, but other animals can also get in our backyard. I don't let the one cat never, Nikki, he's just a toddler with fur. He's not for the streets. He is not for the streets. But Annie is just, she's barely domesticated. It's only because we feed her. But she's mad at me, but I don't let her out she will not be going out during Mars retrograde. And there's some other stuff, but because this shows up in one of my kids' 6th house and it's everybody's cat. So, if you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in the 7th house, this is obviously partner, relationships, and I'm going to say this, and I will die on this hill. The 7th house, you can be in a committed, wonderful marriage with somebody you are crazy in love with in the 7th house, but the 7th house doesn't necessarily represent romance. It represents partnerships and contractual relationships, because you didn't have a choice when all these themes and all these subjects for all these houses were being created. You didn't get to marry who you wanted. You had to marry somebody in your class. And often back when these subjects were created, you were marrying who you were matched up with. You really did not have a choice about who you were marrying. Everything was very strategic back then. And so 7th house is contractual relationships. Business partnerships, collaborations, and you could be re-strategizing. You could think like an opportunity, especially with Jupiter in retrograde right now, you could think like an opportunity has passed for you to do like a partnership with somebody, and it could come back around. Not so shabby. Also, there's, you could have some legal stuff going on. I would not be surprised if you had legal stuff going on, that things got continuances, delays quite a bit. And that's probably, although you're probably anxious to just get it over with, that'll probably work out in your best interest in the 7th house. This is pride-driven conflicts in any kind of relationship, business relationship, partnership relationship, can emerge, and looking at where the communication broke down and fixing that core problem is going to be the way to go. And also like delays in forming new partnerships or progressing in existing ones. And take them to re-strategize. Maybe things won't like take off the way that you think that they'll take off in a new partnership or in a new marriage. Take the time to re-strategize how you're doing the partnership. Not necessarily the person, but there's, again, fine-tuning. Delays in general, also in any kind of contract. You might expect delays in contracts. it's probably not the best time if this is happening in your third or your seventh, to be doing contracts, especially. It's not a great time. But you're gonna double check, and you're gonna make sure that you're gonna have lots of communication, open communication, and you're gonna cross those T's, dot those I's, make sure everything is good. And focusing on balance. It's the house of Libra, right? So we're going to focus on balance and make sure we're not no one in that, right? Because if you're in the seventh house, there's somebody else on the other side of that scale. Make sure nobody's working out of ego, right? Making sure no one's working out of ego. You could be ready to partner up with somebody and realizing like they're so ego driven that now you feel a little reluctant to like tie your reputation to theirs if it's a business thing. Because collaboration is on the table. We're Pluto and Aquarius now. It's time for cooperations, collaborations, working together. So reassessing what you need and if your needs are being met in partnerships. If you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in the 8th house, this is secrets, shared finances, the occult, intimacy, trust, and psychological transformation, and just transformation in general, right? It's the house of the Phoenix. Emotional intensity can come up during a Mars retrograde. Anything that you have unprocessed in anger, resentment, trust issues, intimacy, we do not want to take that on. And also, if it's happening in the 8th house, you probably don't want to tell too many people about it. And if it's happening in Leo, you might feel a little prideful about it. So, have a way to process, have counseling sessions if that's available to you. We're going to be really careful about any way that we tie our finances to another person right now. Especially right now. Any unresolved trust issues, like let's just talk about a scenario that happens a lot. If you are currently with a partner, and I say this all the time, one of the biggest reasons to not stay in a relationship that's really dead is because universe will bring you the person that curls your toes while you are very inconveniently have not moved out of the relationship you kind of know is already done, right? Whether that's because you have like fixed energy around your descendant line or whatever your placements are, that you stay in things longer than you should, very human condition. Almost, for everyone, especially when they're young, but even as we get older, depending on placements and life experience, whatever. But one of the worst reasons to do that, besides your unhappiness and the example that you might be setting for any young people watching, is the fact that universe will send you the person that just you cannot keep off of. Especially as motivation to move you out of something. They're like, oh my God, what is it going to take to move you out of this? If you started a relationship with somebody and one of you was not fully single, this is Mars retrograde in the 8th house is when the trust issues of, well, that's how I got them. How is somebody, like, now are they going to do that with somebody else? Or they might feel that way. It is really time to have conversation around that so that there is trust in the most intimate, secure relationships that you rely on. Financial setbacks in like we're not investing. You might also get like bad news about a debt. Try to delay dealing with that until it goes direct. And for anyone listening, if you have debts, you want to look at the fact that the big 3 credit houses, I think almost all 3 of them now, but definitely 2 of them, have all had information leaks. And because of it, it breaks all the rules. And they have to take, if your information was compromised, they legally have to take all of your stuff off, and not in 6 months, not over 3 months, not you writing letters and 30 days and they don't answer and then you have to write another. Nope. They have to immediately go on TikTok while we still have it. Go on YouTube and go find a fresh new video about exactly how that phone call should go and what you have to demand and the words you have to use. If you have debts right, if all of a sudden you go like, I didn't know this was a debt, or you get a letter saying that you owe this and now there's all these late charges or whatever, see if it's connected to one of the top 3 credit. I'm missing the other word. You know what I'm talking about, Experian, and put it in the comments if you people know what I'm talking about. TransUnion, Experian, and then there's another one that I want to say also begins with an E. But I could be wrong. 2 of them at least were hacked and information was leaked. So that they have to, the credit bureaus, thank you. Yeah, the 3 major ones. And once one takes it off, the others should have to. So anything, but you're not disputing them the way that we're used to disputing anymore. Because this is a new thing, there is a new script and they have to do it while you're on the phone. They have to do immediately. It's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experience. Thank you. So this is what I'm saying. There's new ways to do things. You're not doing things the old way, especially with Pluto and Aquarius. We know the rules now, and now it's time to use the rules against themselves and find new ways to do things, right? Progress forward. Yeah. Once you call one and they remove, the other will have to, you call them, and there are scripts though, and you can find those people willing to give you the free script. So I'm just saying, if you get a big bill, if you get a big debt, if it's a surprise, if it's something that they're like, you have 30 days to pay this, or we're gonna take a breath and go look for the information that you can use to have that removed rather than panic and pay it. Obviously, at some point there's some things you have to pay, right? But I want you to to pause and reflect and find a different way to deal with it. Revisiting psychological patterns tied to power, control, vulnerability, ego, pride, all of that. This is happening in your 8th house. This might be a deep dive, this Mars retrograde, right? Engage in the deep inner work and also work on like your vagus nerve. Find vagus nerve. I'm in love with the book it's the clinical application of the polyvagal theory. But vagus nerve work is amazing, especially when you're doing 8th house healing. Okay. Because it's gentle and it can be done in a way where you're kind of in control. So there's less people to trust in the process. And I know that sounds kind of, again, like counterproductive, but, sometimes we need a gentle way in to break the ice. Sometimes doing, the emotional vomiting doesn't feel safe for everybody, and we have to do things in a safe way. Okay. Yeah, and we're not investing in anything new. If you have 0 to 6 degrees in the 9th house of Leo, this could manifest through the themes of philosophy, travel, education, but also belief systems and conflict around belief systems. I mean, that is everywhere we look right now, right? The practical manifestations are going to be questioning your long-held beliefs, feeling disconnected from spiritual or religious practices. If you have an injury to resent around a spiritual, religious, or just philosophical belief that you feel made you feel less than, made you feel like you went into this group belief system to feel more seen, to feel more heard, and it didn't, instead of that, you were told to like put your own personality down and to kind of assimilate, despite your own intuition or like anything like that. We're deconstructing that right now. If it doesn't feel healthy and if it doesn't feel safe, then you're going along to get along, kind of, because that was the vibe in the group that you were in, and you didn't feel like you could express your own authentic self at all in that group, or you felt bad for who you were, like it kept having to be fixed. I'm trying to use a non-controversial way to say that. These are things we're deconstructing during the ninth house. Academic plans and long-term travel could absolutely be delayed. You know, the kids and I have absolutely talked about, like, you know, if ever conditions were to the place where we would want to temporarily maybe go be nomads, it's in some other country, but we're not expecting to be able to. It would be unrealistic for me to think that that could happen until way after February 23rd. Reevaluating your whole purpose, and also teaching opportunities may get delayed, but then may come in like swinging hard and making nice money for you after, in the ninth house. That's a great time to like pick up the books, pick up the documentaries, and do the self-exploration that you can in the ninth house. You can, again, we can be literary nomads, we can be digital nomads. Expand. If you're used to only listening to one opinion and being in one belief system, I would just check out the other ones just to have a contrast and compare right now, and just do it quietly. It's your life. And so you are entitled to explore other things without feeling shamed or like now you need to be fixed. If you are having 0 to 6 degrees, in the 10th house in Leo, you know how I feel about the 10th house. It is like climbing a jagged hill in a glass atrium with an audience, right? This is your reputation, your career ambitions, whatever you're doing in this house, everybody sees it, right? Your legacy. The practical manifestations of this is you could feel a little stuck right now or unrecognized for something you've been working hard to be recognized. Have patience and also reevaluate. Why do you need the recognition? Is it to be like, haha, I did it first, I did it better, right? Because somebody told you never could, right? Like, this is time for you to re-strategize, especially in the 10th house. This can be unbelievably good for the career. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Make sure that there's no resentment. Hey, Nikki, make sure there's no resentment. Make sure there's no like ulterior motive for you, because it will wash out, right? It'll get seen. It's the 10th house. So I want to make sure that we like take a minute. Absolutely go get your goals. Go get your bag. Go live your life. Go live your vocation. Go live your life purpose. Go satiate your soul, but make sure that every single ounce of motivation behind it is for the most authentic reasons and not out of I'll show them, or I mean that sometimes is the beginning motivation, right? I talked about yesterday with like that whole like living your best life is the best revenge. Okay. Or just let them go be them. Let that be a them problem. You go be you and they have to go be them, right? That's my thing. Revisiting past career opportunities. Reevaluating like, what does that want? I had a conversation yesterday, Mars is in retrograde, about like, at one point I was thinking about going back to school and getting bachelor's and master's, like, whatever, I'll be 58 or I'll be whatever age. I could be 58 and have bachelor's. I can have, be 50, I have some of it done. I would just have to go back and it would be part-time. So it would take a long time. But the reasons I was doing that was a little bit so that I could be taken more seriously. Just gonna say it out loud, right? So now I think that I'm gonna pause on that because there's other places my energy can go, and I might go get like a certification, education, and training on facilitation. You know, maybe it'll be trauma informed, maybe it won't. I don't know. But whatever I do now, I'm revisiting. And that conversation happened yesterday about like, what do I really want that to look like for me, not to prove to anybody else. I have a 10th house Mars. I always have to be aware of my motivations in career, right? Struggles with authority or leadership roles. You could get in fights with bosses or people who think that they're your authority, or just feel like, oh, look, this is not lining up anymore and I cannot deal with this authority figure anymore. Reflect on how your careers align with your passion, your vocation, your calling, satiating your soul. And I would not make any major professional changes until Mars goes direct. All right, kids, we're rounding up to home. If you have 0 to 6 degrees of Leo in the 11th house, community and aspirations, right? Long-term goals, the internet, humanitarian causes, and our social life. Practical manifestations, tension with friends. I'm going to have this a little in the 11th house. That's the only part that I'm like, I'll see from now until January 6th how that goes. But when Venus went through my 11th house, that was not fun for Susie. It wasn't. So, tensions with friends, look at the core reasons, look at resentments. This is where I would look like, do I have a frenemy? Like, do we love each other the way that we used to? Or are we going through the motions? We've grown so apart and it's more contentious to try to pretend to stay friends. Or re-strategizing your friendship, making sure everybody feels like their needs are met in the friendship. And that can go both ways, like making sure egos are out of it. Feeling disconnected from long-term aspirations, or feeling disconnected from your social community. Maybe like your social online peeps were like, those you could not wait. Maybe you're like less enthralled with going on TikTok or checking in to see how everybody's doing. Maybe like your online community groups, or your, you just feel less motivated to participate. You might feel a little drained, and that's okay. Take the time, reflect, right? We're going inward, and making sure our needs are being met, and that our ego, we don't, this is a great time for an ego death. Like I said, we're gonna have ego deaths. I had an ego death around like, why does it bother me to do the skits that everybody's doing? I don't need to worry about who takes me seriously and who doesn't anymore. Right? So I can let that go, have that ego death, have that not be a part of my identity, and then that's going to open me up to other things. So ego death, again, does not mean you are a raging a-hole. Revisiting old friendships too. Repairing old wounds for old. Like if you had a fight, and then all of a sudden it's like slowly coming. It might take some time, but this could be when things kind of like get reevaluated, or Mars in retrograde is actually a good time to have a conversation about, Mercury in retrograde isn't, but Mars in retrograde is. And after December 16th and before January 6th, that's when I would have the conversation. If an old friendship is like, we both changed, we both healed, and maybe the issues won't be there. Sometimes people grow apart and sometimes they can grow back together. Both can happen. You're going to focus on like any kind of charity work you're doing, any kind of community work that you're doing, making sure that aligns. And again, nothing's being done out of like approval or ego. Make sure the community work and the humanitarian work that you're doing is authentic and not performative. We see performative allyship all the time, and it's horrible. It's horrible because, listen, on, people make money on views on social media. So people who are being performative allies if for whatever marginalized group, and some people don't even realize that is as performative as it is. I could do a whole show on that, but just make sure that you're not. Bye, Heidi. I rescheduled your Thanksgiving thing. If you didn't see it, you can move it wherever you like. Just be aware of what that is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up, and also make sure that you're not following people who are performative. You're not taking advice and following people who are performative. Okay. Long-term goals, again, can feel a little thwarted. There's probably a reason you're supposed to re-strategize for sure. The 11th house feels very pertinent right now. Community is where it's at. Cooperation. We live in a world where the 1% is kind of ruling everything. There's a lot more of us. So how we connect and collaborate is a big deal right now, and strategy, right? And spending more time in strategy instead of just acting out as individuals. That should be on the table right now. If you have this in the 12th house, 0 to 6 of Leo, in the 12th house, the Mars retrograde is going to be about your solitude, your hidden fears, the subconscious stuff, the inner healing, right? It's psychic. Things could go bump in the night. Don't get scared. It's just communication. I'm going to say this. I want anybody who has Mars in the 12th house, Mars retrograde in the 12th house, to be making sure that you have supportive, loving people around you. And this is a community that's supportive and loving. In case you don't feel like you have that in your personal life, come into the chat. If you join membership, there's like a very inexpensive level. But there's a Discord that's like a whole other second like sub community within the community, so you don't need me to congregate. This can be a very ouchy time. That we can experience themes of depression, of self-harm, of feeling unheard and unmotivated, and I want you to take extra good care of yourself if this is happening in your 12th house, and reach out. If you've never seen me before and you're watching this video, this is still a community that you're welcome in, and you can still email me if you're really struggling, because what I'm going to do is encourage you to reach out to hotlines, to professionals. But don't let it get super dark, right? Because you can feel a form of lethargy with Mars in retrograde in the 12th house that feels so dissociative that it starts to border on questioning your place here. And we don't want you doing that. And if you do, we want it to be extremely temporary, momentary, and seek community and seek support. Emotional baggage and fears can arise to the surface. Feeling isolated, drawn in, this is what I'm talking about. Revisiting spiritual practices, anything that helps you. This is a great time to take on like yoga, or one of those YouTube things where they're in the morning and there's some kind of community, or there's meditation. Make sure that you're giving yourself as much support as you can. The other thing is that if you're having Mars in retrograde here, you could have a little frenemy thing, especially if you got Venus in the 12th house also. just be careful that you're not dealing with like passive aggressive people that should be supportive. But also, if you're clairvoyant, if you are clairsentient, you could really get physical indications of connection with your guides here. So write that all down if you experience that. So listen, this is a powerful opportunity to like reassess how we assert ourselves, and our relationship with passion, confidence, resentments, anger, all of that. So we can like pull it back and heal it for good. Look at the core reasons. As much patience and understanding and willingness to like use the time to reflect instead of just be frustrated. The frustration is going to be your decision. Know before you go into the transits. And you can transform what would be frustration into opportunity. Absolutely. I quoted this in the first video, but Stephen Forrest would say that like it encourages a deeper understanding of passion and resentments. And that is good for us at the end of the day. To have a deeper understanding about any parts of our soul, of our processes, how we navigate our relationship with all those things, especially all those emotions that absolutely affect our health. They absolutely affect our health. We know that now, right? That would have been poo-pooed 20, 30 years ago, but we know that now. And I want you all taking very good care of yourselves. Seize the opportunities. Re-strategize, re-strategize, re-strategize. It's Mars. I will take questions in membership about this. This is going on till February 23rd. Liking and sharing really helps. This was an unexpected third astrological video. I usually don't do astrology videos on Sunday. In about 3 p.m. today, if you're catching the end of this, there will still be, as I promised, every other Sunday. There's a general reading that I already did and some tarot tips. So that should be up, and that'll just be a regular video. I won't be live in the chat, and it won't be live. So you can watch that at your leisure. Thank you for being here. If you're not already like a part of the community, consider it. These are a lot of just good humans that hang out on this channel, and they are lovely and funny, and we'd love to have you here. And don't miss Lori's Awake Space podcast tomorrow at 9 a.m. or anytime you can watch it during the day. And go follow her also on like, Spotify and all of that. That really helps. YouTube is good, but watching her through an actual podcasting is like, support that too for her, because she does a lot of labor for all of us. I love you. Now you love you. I'll see you all soon. Bye.